So just a quick overview on the process we're doing here. We're not going to have any talking until I'm done presenting, just to make this smooth and easy for everyone, but we will open it up to some quick Q&As. So if you see anything that you would like to ask about, make note of it or put it on a comment on the Google Doc for me. And this document can be found on our official website. HobbitWhoCould has linked it in the announcement page, and that website you can also go and click a link to go straight to the Google Doc itself. And this document, you know, I typed this up, but this was a very big community effort by anywhere between 20 and 30 people in meetings at one time, following Robert's Rules of Order, contributing their ideas. It took about a month for us to put together and get to a point where we were really happy with it. All right. So very brief general overview here on how the process works is we have elected administrators, and they are middlemen. They have no real authority over us. They are true community servants in a essentially pure democracy or direct democratic system, or as close as we can get to with the technological restraints we have. So essentially, we bring up issues, whether it be through talking about it in chat, on Facebook, directly messaging our elected administrators, and then they can make informed decisions just from us talking about it if it needs to move on. But the main way is to submit a formal proposal on the website. Say you want to ban islands, you go and you type, I would like to ban islands. And there will be a list of everything that's been submitted. You choose if you want to support it or not by just clicking, yes, I want to support this. And anything with enough support goes to the elected administrators. They kind of filter it out, make some informed decisions, and anything that passes their discussion and vote comes back to us. So the important thing here is everything begins with us and ends with us. So we have all of that power reserved at all times. Now, I was just talking about elected administrators, and this first section right here is kind of where we go into that. And the reason we use the term elected administrators is because these are not leaders. They're not a committee. They're not a rules committee. They are an administrator in the truest sense of the word, which means that, like we just said, they're paper pushers. They are clerical inclusive to everybody, but it's small enough to make meetings. We will have at all times 7 elected administrators. And we always go with odd numbers like this just to make sure that there's no tiebreakers or anything like that. And these 7 elected administrators all required to be at all the meetings for the meeting to happen. So in other words, there's a quorum of 7 for that meeting to happen. If at any point we have to find a new elected administrator, if they quit, if we remove them from office, which we talk about later down in the document, we do have emergency votes where we freeze all of the processes of the elected administrators. Everything stops until we're back up to 7. That way we don't have just 6 or 5 people trying to make decisions instead of the full 7 that we believe is the healthy number for the community. And then on top of the 7 elected administrators, we do also have right here on section 1A3 a scribe. And the scribe has a very different function in that they are a non-voting member of this elected body. So they don't really partake in the conversation. They don't vote on it during the elected administrator meetings. They are there to take notes, record the meeting, take the minutes, and more than anything, enforce Robert's Rules of Order, which is a set of rules that is used by something like 85% of all bodies like this. Just a very simple way to keep things organized, keep everyone civil and on the same page. As far as how we elect these EAs time frame, it is important, we think, to have experienced people on this body at all times. So we do not elect all of them at once, with the exception of this first year, of course. So we will elect 3 members on a even or on an odd number year, along with the scribe. And then the other year on the odd number years, we elect 4 of them. And that is talked about more down here when we get there. But as I just said, this first year, we have to mix things up a little bit. We'll be electing all 7. The 3 elected administrators this year with the lowest number of votes will only serve 1 term. And that's so that we can establish a pattern and get back to that even and odd number year. So 4 highest ones this year will have a 2-year term. Bottom 3 will have a 1-year. Just going back over the scribe information here.
Is it linked anywhere? I'd like to have a copy open.
And just an important note here, that scribe, just to avoid them having any influence over the vote, they're not supposed to talk during these meetings. The meetings are recorded just to help ensure this. Give me a second to scroll down here. So going over term limits, all elected administrators, with the exception of this first year, will serve a 2-year term. And then they are allowed to serve a total of 2 term totals, a total of 2 terms. So they can run for re-election, but they can't be consecutive. So what that means is if I were to be an elected administrator today, I served for 2 years, I would have to take at least 1 year off before I could come back and be on that body again. And this is the one and only part of this document which is unamendable, meaning we can't change those term limits, and that's to prevent any kind of a hostile takeover, any kind of a rogue agent trying to establish themselves in an oligarchical position, kind of like the Rules Committee has done. But we do have a few caveats right here, in that if for some reason we run out of capable people to be an elected administrator, we can do a one-time extension to allow a previous EA to run again. This does take place a little differently than most elections, where we skip one of the processes basically because it would be unnecessary. But as long as they get a 3/4 majority vote by the community, they are granted a one-time extension. And then we can amend this part, allows us to amend that single extension. If we need to, we can allow for multiple extensions, but they do require 3/4 every time, and it does mean that all other options have to be exhausted, meaning there are 0 people that are years 18 or older that wish to run. This is a quick note here. I'll probably speed up some stuff as we go on. This is a bit of a longer area, so I apologize. But terms are decided by the seat being filled, not the individual. So if I serve for one of my 2 years and I step down and somebody else has to be emergency voted in, that their term is over in 1 year, because you're looking at 2 years for that seat, not for that individual. And that is to keep us on a pattern of 4 1 year, 3 the other year. I'll kind of skip through a lot of this and just give you a brief overview. There are safety measures in place here. If we try to remove someone from office, which is called a recall election, if they try to step down or something to away from that, because if they're recalled from office, they're never allowed to run again. So if they know that's happening and they try and step down, there are safety measures in here to prevent them from being an elected administrator again. Prior to taking office, all voted-in candidates will sign an oath of office, which is attached to this document at the bottom, and that does give us consent to record all of their meetings or any time they are acting as a direct representative in their role as an elected administrator for the community, because all meetings are to be recorded. We will also have vetting processes, essentially, because as we mentioned, you do have to be 18 years or older to run for office, and that is just to make sure that we have mature enough people that have the schedule to meet the needs of this. So we will have the expiring elected administrators, and what that means is the ones that are about to be replaced, they will be the ones to verify these people's age and their alias, because we don't want people, trying to make a fake Discord or something. But we do have language in here to prevent or to encourage everyone to blank out all their personal information other than their name and date of birth. We don't want to be holding any sensitive information here. This is just going back into what we were talking about earlier, so I'll kind of skip that, but we elect 4 EAs 1 year, 3 the next. All right, so Section 2, candidate selection and EA election. This will be an inclusive process designed to cultivate an atmosphere of open-minded captain players from all corners of the format. There will be a minimal 1 restriction as to who may submit their name for candidacy consideration by the community, and that is, as we just said, you have to be at least 18 years or older here. And then as an extra safety measure, lead moderators, or any staff members of the Discord that they might have below a moderator in the future are not allowed to hold office. And that is, 1, to prevent them from, muting other people or controlling the dialogue amongst what's being said during an election, and also to prevent favoritism due to the color of their name or anything simple like that. We don't want them to stand out any differently. But should a moderator, or staff member decide they want to run, they are welcome to do so. They just have to abdicate from their position as a staff member no more than 30 days prior to pre-candidacy selection. And then same thing here, anyone who has sensitive information, so passwords for our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, the website, you can run, but you do have to abdicate this authority away, just so you can't control the dialogue. We do have an exception here for the scribe, because I do think it's necessary that scribe has the ability to post their minutes on Facebook, have access to the Google Drive, things of that nature, and especially since they have no voting power. So here on out, we just kind of talk about the timeframes for this, and that's just to make sure we are inclusive as to giving everyone a fair chance to get their name in. So there's 2 parts of it. You have pre-candidacy and then selection, and then your candidate election. And that's to minimize how many people are running for office at one time. So what that means is pre-candidate selection, if anyone that wants to run can submit their name, and they have to do that within no less than 45 days prior to the election is when all this starts. They can start submitting their name 45 days. It ends 15 days before the real election starts, which gives everyone 30 days to get their name out there. So if you decide to do a pre-candidacy selection, put your name in there, and you'll have a list of everyone that wants to run for office, and you will have a single voting option. You can go in and you can click, yes, I would like to support this member to run for office. And then the individuals who have the highest threshold of yeses will move on. That is the top 25% of submissions, and I'll get down there in a little bit. But the top 25% of people who submit their name and get the most votes will move on to the final election, or anyone who gets a total of 10%. And we will make sure all names are listed alphabetically, either by their Discord tag or their alias they choose to go by if they don't use Discord. here are some of the processes we mentioned earlier. Blacking out the information from their ID, having a video conference to confirm age. The signing process, which is what we just talked about for pre-candidacy election, you've got 10 days to do that. And that's where you go through and you select who you think should move on to the final election. And you're allowed to sign up to 3 people's submissions for that. That way you're not pigeonholed into just supporting one person. And this also means we have a greater chance of having a diverse ballot full of people. And a pre-candidate's inclusion on the ballot will be decided by a number of signatures, like we just talked about. So you either fall into the top 25% of pre-candidates with total signatures, or you obtain 10% of total signatures. And that's in case there's too few people for the top 25% to be needed or to work. So once the pre-candidacy selection, we know who's going to move on to the election. We go to the election, and that has to happen within 15 days. And that's to prevent elected administrators from saying, oh, we'll do this in like a year, we'll do it next year, setting a hard time frame to prevent them from having a coup trying to hold power for longer than they should. And these votes will stay open for 7 calendar days. That's to give everyone in the community ample time to make their votes, make sure we're being inclusive to everyone that would like to participate in that. And then we just have a simple majority here for who wins. The top candidates who receive the highest number of votes, with a total number not exceeding the number of elected administrator seats up for election, will come in. So if we're electing 4 this year, the 4 individuals with the highest number of votes will win. We're electing 3, the 3 with the highest. This year we're electing 7, so the 7 with the highest wins. And for the scribe, there's only 1 of them. So just whoever has the most vote wins. The scribe election does take place a little later, 7 days later, minus this year. We'll get into that though. And we do have a time limit. Once that vote is complete, they have to sign their oath of office and come into office within 7 days. Again, this is preventing elected administrators from trying to have a coup, trying to filibuster, something like that. And all of the elected administrators coming into office should come into office at the exact same time. And if anyone fails to follow these steps, they will give up their elected administrator office that they won. It'll go to an emergency revote. If you choose to step down as an elected administrator, even if you're only 6 months into your term, that counts as an entire term for you. We do have some more information here on the oath of office. A digital copy of these oath of offices should be made publicly available, posted on our social media account or our website, just like everything else for full transparency. If one of the 4 people running for office doesn't sign their oath of office, it's not going to impede the other ones. We're just going to get rid of that person after the 7 days and have an emergency election to fill that spot, but we'll go ahead and let the other ones take their position. And formally speaking, as soon as a individual signs their oath of office, as soon as they're uploaded online, that's when they are officially considered an elected administrator, and the old ones are not. And this is we're just talking about some in the founding year of Captain. Anytime you see that, that is a one-time exception for this year because things are going to be different as we have to establish ourselves. Recall votes will exist as a way for the community to maintain power at all times by removing elected administrators that we deem are incapable or who we have lost faith in. A recall election follows normal voting process for a rules change. And a rules change has a higher majority than just banning or something. So if we're going to remove someone from office, it just does take a little bit more majority to make that happen. And if there are no public submissions to remove someone from office, the elected administrators can choose to move forward with that themselves, as long as they have a 4-2 majority vote of the other 6 elected administrators to remove them from office. At that point, it will still go to a wider community vote. And we have some safety mechanisms in here to prevent any kind of power grabs there. All recall votes will be open for no less than 5 days. Give people plenty of time to vote on these issues. And a 2/3 majority here, as opposed to being 50% or anything, is all it takes from the community to remove someone from office. And a 2/3 majority is calculated by the number of votes, not the number of community members. Multiple recall votes can happen at once. If we need to remove multiple people at one time, we can do that. So Section 4, duties of the elected administrators will purposely be designed to minimize their influence and power. While some power is inevitable, will inevitably end up in the hands of the elected body. The system and this document is designed to directly reduce and allow for as close as we can get to a pure democracy or a direct democracy. Keynote, I've been repeating this throughout the day, but elected administrators are administrators, paper pushers, and community servants in the truest sense, in that the power starts with us and ends with us. All decisions start with us and end with us. They just make it happen. They are the hands-on people that make what we want come to fruition. Elected administrators must remain active in the community. So if they just disappear, nobody starts hearing from them, we can move forward to a recall election. This is purposely left vague, as many things in a document like this, so that it's flexible as time goes on and as the needs change. But precedents can be set here as we see fit. Elected administrators are required to meet on no less than a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, they are required to have an official meeting. They can choose when to set this if they want to do it, in January, then in April. They should try and set it at a regularly scheduled time or recurring time. But that's up to them, and that's just to make sure that their needs are met and they're able to do what we're asking of them here. Additionally, on top of a quarterly meeting, they are allowed to hold more meetings. That's why we have a no less option in here. If something comes up and they just really need to talk about something, get something on a ballot, get a vote happen, they're allowed to call extra meetings. But again, if you remember back at the beginning, there is a quorum, so all 7 are required to be there. And as I've said a few times, the minutes of the conversation, which the scribe will take, will always be posted, open to the community, to provide full transparency and let anyone see what was discussed here. And we'll also have a voice recording of that entire meeting posted, just to make sure there's an extra check system on top of the minutes, make sure everything's being honestly done. And at the conclusion of a meeting, there's a 48-hour time frame for them to post that online. On top of those meetings, every 6 months or twice a year, town hall meetings are required, and that's where the elected administrators and the scribe will do something very similar to what we're doing now, in that they have a meeting open to everyone, so everyone can come, talk directly to them, ask their questions, give them ideas. Elected administrators can be put on the spot and say, hey, what was your reasoning for voting this way 3 months ago? Something like that. And again, this is a no less than, so they're allowed to hold these more often as needed. But just like with their regular meetings, we'll follow Robert's Rules of Order, which the rules will be made very publicly accessible. And you will have a 5-day window to get any topics on the agenda that you want for these town hall meetings. Said they'll be live, even though they'll be over Discord chat, voice chat. That is, they do have a requirement to use text options for anyone that's not comfortable speaking out loud for any reason. We do have time frames on these. These town hall meetings have to be at least 60 minutes, but no longer than 120 minutes. Each member should be given 5 minutes of open discussion to give proper representation. There's a requirement that at least 10 community members are given the floor to speak, and each of them is to be given at least 3 minutes to speak. And that's to make sure we're being as inclusive as possible. And EA members are required to reschedule all quarterly meetings if not all 7 are available. Like we've said before, there's a quorum of 7, but that rule is superseded by the requirement of a quarterly meeting. So they cannot keep saying, oh, we don't have enough people every single quarter to get out of meetings. And if they don't, a recall vote will automatically trigger should an elected administrator be unable to make more than 2 meetings in a row or 3 in a calendar year. It'll automatically go to us voting to remove them from office if we choose. They lose, if you're recalled, you lose eligibility for office as we defined a little higher up. They do have an option to step down or to ask to be temporarily replaced with an interim elected administrator. And this is for a maximum term of 6 months here. During these elected administrator meetings, so the quarterly meetings that they have, they are required to discuss and vote on every single community submission that received enough support. So we'll go down here a little bit to section 01. They are required to vote on 25%, the top 25% of the active proposals. And we calculate 25% looking at a rolling average. So we'll look at the last 6 months. We'll see how many have been submitted on average over the last 6 months. And then we'll take the top 25% of that number. And that's how many that they are required to talk about and vote on every single meeting. As an extra, a few checks and balances here, they are required to vote on no less than 10, should there be 10 available. But they are not required to vote on more than 50. And that is to keep things reasonable for them. Just some fancy language here, which is saying, you know, if that 10 isn't available, you know, they obviously don't have to make up new numbers to get there. On top of voting on community submitted ones, the elected administrators do have the option to vote on anything additional. So, you know, we mentioned before, if they see you talking a lot in Discord about how ILO needs to be banned, and they've seen 47 discussions over the last 2 months, but no one submitted that, they can make a judgment call and they can choose to vote on that anyways, because that would just be acting in good faith. But anything that they choose to vote on this way does not count towards their above number of threshold for votes. And that's to prevent them from coming up with their own votes to supersede what we want to talk about. EAs can vote yes, no, or they can abstain on all votes. And since we do have a quorum of 7 elected administrators, an abstain will not be factored into the votes. So if all 7 vote, but one says 6 or one says abstain, you're only looking at 6 votes to be counted this way. And that is normal procedures for Robert's rules when there is a quorum, which we do have. Okay, I do not know what just happened there. During these meetings are recorded by the scribe, so we are going to know exactly how each individual elected administrator voted on each things. It takes 5 votes from the elected administrators to move on. That's to amend bans and unbans. Takes 5 for that. Any topic to amend 4-man comprehensive rules requires 6 votes to move on there. And then 6 for changing anything on the Constitution as well. And give me just 1 second here. Same as before, everything that they do has to be published within 48 hours. And they do have to publish, sorry, this is their agenda. So what they're going to be talking about during their meetings, what's going to be voted on. We have to have that published and made available to us 48 hours prior to their meetings. And that should include straight numbers. So, why is a specific thing being voted on? We need to know kind of how many people supported that vote, what percentage it was, and why it got to move on. So as soon as the elected administrators do their votes, we go straight to community votes on anything that garnered enough support. Community votes must occur no more than 3 calendar days after the elected administrators has decided to pass something on. So anything that they have decided to pass on to us, they have 3 days to get to us to start voting on. And just in the nature of inclusivity and being fair, being good faith actors, those votes should be open for 7 days, just like everything else we have. And the results of every vote that the community makes should be recorded at the conclusion of the vote and made available online so that we can see exactly how we all voted, make sure there's nothing funny going on with the numbers there. And that should be made available on our website, our social media accounts, anywhere that we can get it to make it visible. And there's a 3-day time period from the vote being done to get that posted. We're just going back over percentages here required to get stuff done, which was added back up in the last section as well. And just to reiterate, and since this is a community, this is not looking at what the EAs are doing. To ban or unban a card, it does take a 2/3 majority, so about 66% in favor of, or 75% majority to amend the format comprehensive rules, or to change the Constitution, anything like that. With the exception of recall elections, which only need a 2/3 majority. If you will, all give me just 1 second here. Votes are held when the elected body falls under 7 people. We've pretty much already talked about that ad nauseum. Sorry for kind of getting ahead of myself a few times. To protect the integrity of captain, any persons who is an employee, contractor, or agent of Wizards of the Coast, or any person who has been an employee, contractor, or agent from within 9 months of the date of the election is not allowed to hold office. And the official captain rules and ban list draw their power from this governing document. As such, they are an addendum within this bill, which we'll get to that here in just a second. And something very important, before I get to that real quick, all of these sections, and we'll open this a bit up to conversation here, but all of these main sections will be voted on. So you'll have 8 different votes when we go to vote on this. If you like 1 through 6, but you hate 7, you can vote against 7. If people would like to vote on every individual bullet point, we can do that, but that's going to be, a few hundred votes everyone has to make. Section 9 here is an important one, and that is something that cannot be voted on. This is a copywritten document. I do hold copyright laws to it. So any changes made to this governing document, its components, bills, addendums, amendments, bylaws, if they do not follow the proper voting methods outlined above, it'll be seen as a breach of the copyright status, and legal action will be taken. And the reason this is in here is if we have elected administrators that try to disregard everything going on in the Constitution, if they try and make stuff happen without the proper number of votes, we have this governing document here, this Constitution. We have it as a set of rules, but it has to have teeth. We have to have a way to really enforce it. So on the off chance we do get a bad faith actor who tries to do something, I've incorporated this to just completely protect us. And this is something that will not be voted on, because this is just absolutely mandatory in accordance with copyright laws. Anything below this point, though, any addendums are released from copyright. So any further addendums, not including amendments, unless otherwise stated by this document's author, which do not directly reference the Captain Constitution proper, which is everything above this point, in a way that would, through the existence of the addendum, alter it. So if you make an addendum that would completely change Rule 9, say, Addendum 9 is passed saying Section 9 of the Constitution, is gone. That's changing the Constitution proper. So things like that are not allowed. Or rather, they're, you can change it, but then that falls under copyright protection here. And this is just because a lot of this stuff at this point I did not do. It's just not fair to have any copyright. So these are the rules, simplified rules. This is taken pretty much straight from the Commander website, altered for us. I think we all know how to play, so I won't get into that. We do have a reference here of how commanders are referred to as captains. And big shout out to Silly Half-Orc for putting a lot of this here together to make the rules work for commander, or make the commander rules work for captain. The ban list currently is exactly the same as what is on commander. So these are all the same. We have a blacklist here, which has a little bit of more bite to it. And these are, for the most part, still all cards that are on the ban list. So anti-cards, they're all banned, just like they are in Commander. All of the cards that depict racism or anything, they're automatically banned, just like they are in Commander. Wizards of the Coast doesn't even acknowledge those cards anymore. Conspiracy cards, silver bordered cards, anything requiring physical dexterity, starting sub games. And what started everything for us, The Walking Dead is on here. They are blacklisted, not banned, which is an extra step, because they are predatory marketing. We have defined predatory marketing as the physical printing and selling of cards by Wizards of the Coast without the distribution through brick and mortar retailers and or third-party wholesalers that have limited availability based on region and or a time gate on availability that goes above that of a print run, i.e. available to order only X days. which is exactly how the Walking Dead secret layer, that's exactly what they are. Furthermore, the digital distribution of online-only cards, which have limited time availability to acquire said online products. Due to the somewhat ambiguity of a definition here, we do have an inclusion of the buy a box exclusive promos. I will say, we have had a lot of conversation about the inclusion of these and their merits on this list. There's some divide, but they do arguably fall into this definition. So when we go to vote on everything, I said we're going to make sure that those first 8 sections are voted on separately. Addendum 1 here will be voted on. In addition to that, we will make sure that there is a vote that says what should be counted as predatory marketing. You'll have 2 options: the Walking Dead secret layer, buy a box promos. So if you agree or disagree with one of their inclusions, let us know. We're not making any decisions for the community here. This is everyone's decision to make. I'm not making it by putting them on here. They're just on here as a placeholder because they arguably do fall within the definition of predatory marketing. And a big thing on the blacklist, especially for these predatory marketing cards, and a reason why the blacklist exists is so that if a card is is no longer predatory, it automatically comes off. So if a blacklisted card is printed in such a way that would eliminate its status as a predatory card, which is printed as a naturally occurring MTG non-premium booster product that is not sold exclusively by Wizards of the Coast. So what that means is, like, if the Walking Dead's come back as a masterpiece, that's not a naturally occurring element of that product, so they would still be considered predatory. But if they come out in a draft booster, they automatically come off the blacklist and go to the ban list instead. We can vote on them at that point. The gold list are cards that, opposite of blacklist, cannot be banned. Gold list includes basic lands. We're not going to let people try and ban islands and ruin the format for us. Frequently asked questions here on kind of what counts as what, which I won't really go through. Comprehensive rules, this is basically going through replacing all instances of commander with captain. Again, big shout out to Silly Half-Orc for this. Addendum 2 here is what we decided on in the Constitutional Committee. And again, these addendums will be voted on. And that is how to handle communications with WoTC. So if WoTC may reach out to us at some point in the future, maybe they want to print a captain product, anything like this. So the 7 voting members of the elected administrator are subject to the following. They shall have no backdoor or closed-door communications with WoTC representatives. They shall have no backdoor or closed-door communications with any third-party organization related to MTG that is not a strictly personal professional in regards to a professional job or occupation or legal matter. They shall not issue public statements to such third-party organizations on behalf of the community. And the scribe, in that they are a non-voting member, acts as the official liaison between the elected administrators, any third-party organization, and the community as a whole, but may not make or issue public statements on the topic without community approval. This policy is amendable at a later date, pending community vote. Oath of office, this is just what the individuals will sign. They are swearing to uphold the Constitution. They're affirming. They are affirming they're at least 18 years of age. They are affirming to give consent to be audio recorded. And they are in compliance with all the requirements to be elected administrator. And they are also affirming that they have no previous alias or Discord tag associated with captain that is not eligible for the office. This is for the voting time periods. If you remember earlier, we have like 45 days for pre-candidates, like another 30 days for election. So it's a very long process most years when we elect our administrators. We don't have the time this year for that. It's crucial we get up and going. So we have this one-time addendum here, which is changing those time periods. And it's basically 7 days, 7 days. So any member of the captain community will be given 7 days to submit their name for election. And we are skipping pre-candidacy selection this time because it adds far too much burden and time onto our time constraints. It's just not feasible this year. At the end of the 7-day period, when everyone has submitted their names that wants to, assuming IT is ready to go with all of this, all their names will be uploaded for the election. They'll be placed alphabetically, and then voting will start. Voting will be open for 7 days. EA and scribe elections this year will happen at the same time. Members of the captain community can vote for up to 3 candidates or for 25% of total candidates, whichever is greater. Very similar to how it already was. And then whoever has the most votes, the 7 elected administrators with the most votes and the scribe with the 1 scribe with the most vote will win the election. Keeping in mind, this year, the elected administrators with the top 4 elected administrators in terms of votes will serve a 2-year term. The bottom 3 will serve a 1-year term. They're still allowed to have a second term, but that 1 year does count as an entire 2-year term. And these are the same rules we had there. With that, I am going to hop back into Discord, and we're going to open this up for some live Q&As.